When you think about it, everything we see, like movies, pop songs, even just scrolling through dating apps, it's all about this one single idea of what romance and sex should feel like.
The spark.
The spark, exactly. It's about the electricity, the unknown, that kind of terrifying, heart-pounding risk of finding someone new. We're just obsessed with the beginning of things.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, psychologically, we're hardwired to notice novelty. The unpredictable it's exciting. It's a dopamine hit.
Totally. It's like an adrenaline sport. But today, we're going to look at the complete opposite end of that spectrum. We're doing a deep dive into an idea that just flips that whole script on its head.
Okay.
We're asking, what happens when the main feeling you're after isn't excitement, but relief?
That's a fascinating pivot. You're trading the thrill of a potential future for the safety of the past.
Right. And we're breaking down an essay today by the writer and philosopher Pedro Malha. It's titled, When Sex Felt Like a Return.
I love this piece.
And I want to be clear, this is not your typical how-to advice. This is a philosophical look at a very specific, almost ghostly kind of intimacy.
Yeah, he's really digging into the feeling of comfort itself, the architecture of these encounters that don't feel like exploration, but like, as he puts it, stepping back into a room whose shape you already know.
That line. A room whose shape you already know. It's so good. So our mission today is to unpack that room. We're going to look at why we're drawn to this intense familiarity, the huge difference between feeling at home and actually belonging.
And the hidden costs, the price of choosing that comfort over, actual growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just a heads up for everyone listening, this one, it requires a little bit of honesty with yourself.
Oh, yeah. Mala articulates things that I think we've all felt, maybe late at night, maybe with an ex, or even someone who just felt like an ex, but we don't really admit it. It doesn't fit the script.
Right. So let's get into the architecture of this return. Mala starts by defining the feeling of what's missing. He talks about sex where nothing needs to be explained, nothing needs to be asked for.
And that's the hook. He calls it the absence of the labor of translation.
The labor of translation.
And think about that for a second. The sheer effort it takes to meet someone new, you have to translate your entire inner world for them.
Everything. Your jokes, your history, your boundaries. You're constantly negotiating how you're being seen.
It's exhausting. It's a performance. You're auditioning.
Mm-hmm.
But in these return moments, Malha says the gestures, the silences, they arrive with a sense of prior agreement. You're not building something new. You're just running a script you both already know by heart.
Prior agreement. It sounds so formal, but it feels completely physical. It's like muscle memory.
It is. And because of that, the feeling you get isn't anxiety or excitement. He says it's a softening. It's relief.
A softening.
Yeah. Mahler writes that it feels like the encounter isn't happening for the first time, but is just resuming where it once paused.
That is such a wild concept. The timeline just loops. You're not starting a new track. You're just unpausing a song that was already playing in the background.
Right. And this leads to a really key insight about who we're actually connecting with in those moments.
Okay.
Because Malha suggests you aren't really recognizing the specific person in front of you, not in a fresh way. You're recognizing a familiar emotional climate.
Wait, unpack that a bit. An emotional climate. What does that mean?
It's the vibe, the whole atmosphere of the interaction. You're not connecting with the person as they are today with all their new messy changes. You're connecting with a way of being together that has the weight of the past all over it.
So the person becomes a vessel for the feeling.
In a way, yeah. And Malha argues that this lack of surprise, it reads as safety. In that climate, yourself can finally rest.
You can stop monitoring yourself.
Exactly. You start worrying if you're being understood because the understanding feels like it's just baked in.
And that desire to just stop performing, to take the costume off, that's so universal.
Of course. But here's the twist, Mala adds. The comfort isn't coming from what's happening now. It's coming from the echo of something that once felt workable, survivable, perhaps even warm.
Workable and survivable. That's a pretty low bar, isn't it? It didn't have to be perfect.
No.
It just had to be known.
It just had to be known. You don't have to check if the floorboards are solid because, you walked on them 5 years ago and you didn't fall through.
Right.
Or, and this is where it gets really interesting, it's because you walked on floorboards just like them before.
Okay. This was the part of the essay that really blew my mind. Because at first, I thought this was all just about sleeping with an ex.
Mm-hmm.
But Mala says this return thing can happen with brand new people, too.
It absolutely can. He talks about resemblance. The feeling of return is often triggered by something small. A tone of voice, a pattern of attention, the way someone waits for you to finish a sentence.
And it mirrors something from your past.
Something earlier and unfinished, is how he puts it.
So you could meet a total stranger, but the cadence of their voice triggers this deep recognition, and all of a sudden, you're not discovering them.
No, you're returning to a dynamic you already know how to perform. Your nervous system just goes, oh, I know this dance.
It's a shortcut.
It's the ultimate shortcut. He calls it the quickest route back to that recognizable terrain. It lets you completely bypass the slow, sometimes difficult work of finding out who a person is now.
That sounds efficient,
Yeah.
but also maybe a little lazy or just protective.
Mala uses the word compliance. He says newness is demanding. It asks all these big questions like, who are you now? What do you want? Where is this going?
Questions you might not have answers to.
Right, but familiarity. It doesn't ask for answers. It just asks for compliance.
He just asks you to play your part.
Exactly. It allows the self to move along grooves worn by repetition.
I love that image of the grooves. It's
Yeah.
like a record player needle. You just drop it in, and the momentum does the rest.
And that momentum is so seductive because it replaces the effort of choice. You don't have to imagine a future with this person. You fill the present with something that feels known.
Okay, so we built this picture of why it's so appealing. It's safe, it's a relief, it's easy. But then Malha drops this huge distinction in the middle of the essay that changes everything. He separates familiarity from belonging.
This is the absolute core of the argument. And we get these two mixed up all the time because they both use the language of ease.
Language of ease.
Yeah, in both situations you feel like you don't need to explain yourself, but the difference between them is fundamental.
Yeah. How do we tell them apart?
Okay, so belonging. That's about being met as you are right now, in the shape you're in today. It's an acceptance of your present reality with all your new edges and your growth.
And familiarity.
Familiarity meets you as you were, or as you learn to be. It kind of invites you to shrink back into that old shape.
Oof.
The comfort comes from staying inside a version of yourself that's already been validated.
And that's the trap, isn't it? Because validation feels so good, even if it's for a version of you that, doesn't even really exist anymore.
Malha says the old shape no longer fits. It's the trap of validation without nourishment. He has this line, the self can feel at home without being nourished.
Wow.
There's warmth, there's a kind of closeness maybe, but nothing's growing. It's just circling.
It's a loop. It's stasis.
Yeah, it just revisits the same emotional territory over and over, disguised as continuity. It makes you feel like something has endured, that a pattern survived. But endurance isn't always strength.
Right.
Sometimes he says, it's just the persistence of what was never questioned.
The persistence of what was never questioned. That is such a heavy line. It means just because something keeps happening doesn't mean it's destiny.
Just means you haven't broken the cycle yet. And often these encounters feel inevitable, like, well, of course we ended up here again.
That sense of inevitability is so comforting because it takes away your responsibility. It wasn't a choice. It was always going to happen.
And you're spared the discomfort of agency.
The discomfort of agency. I think that's why this essay heats so hard. It really forces you to look at the places where you've traded your own agency for a little bit of safety.
Exactly.
But I want to be fair here. Mala isn't just wagging his finger at us, is he? He seems to have a lot of compassion for why we do this.
A ton. He's very clear that this isn't foolish or naive. It's a deeply human response to just being exhausted by uncertainty. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah, life is hard. Sometimes you just need a break from being yourself.
And the familiar, even if it wasn't great, carries the memory of survival. You got through it before. It didn't break you. So when you're overwhelmed, going back to that feels like choosing the proven over the speculative.
It's emotional risk management. The devil you know is way better than the angel you have to, interview for the job.
And it's not just survival. He introduces this other really subtle idea. He calls it loyalty to the pattern.
Okay, talk about this. Loyalty not to the person, but to the history itself.
Yes. Breaking that pattern, actually walking away for good, it can feel like a betrayal. Not of the other person necessarily, but a betrayal of the meaning that relationship once had.
So by going back, by hooking up again, we're kind of proving that it all mattered.
We're keeping the past alive in the present. If we stop returning, it's like admitting that its importance has faded, that the story is over. So we choose repetition over rupture.
We'd rather repeat a painful pattern than admit that something important to us is dead.
And sometimes we even mistake that repetition for care. We think, I keep coming back to this, I must really love them.
But maybe you're just being faithful to a memory.
Exactly. Faithful to what was significant, not what's actually alive right now.
So, okay, let's talk about the cost. We know why it's tempting, but what happens when you stay in that room for too long? Malha describes this very specific emotional texture.
He calls it a gentle melancholy.
Not agony, not heartbreak,
Yeah.
just gentle melancholy.
It's that feeling of pleasure that's tinged with the knowledge that this isn't going anywhere. Pleasure is real, but it can't hide the truth that you're in a space that doesn't expand.
It's like the feeling of a Sunday evening when you know you have to go to work on Monday.
That's a good way to put it. And another cost is how it blurs time. You start responding to echoes instead of what's actually happening. It obscures the reality of the present relationship.
You're seeing ghosts.
You're interacting with a memory. And the most dangerous part is that you, the real current you, start to become invisible.
How so?
Your needs in the present moment get completely overshadowed by the weight of the familiar pattern. You can't ask for something different.
Because asking for something different would break the spell.
It shatters the room. The whole point is to avoid uncertainty, and change is the definition of uncertainty. So we learn to prioritize the relief of familiarity over the discomfort of acknowledging its insufficiency.
We choose relief over truth. That is a brutal trade-off.
It is. But again, Mala frames it as a negotiation. We need both comfort and growth. When we're depleted, the scale just tips toward comfort.
But the cracks have to show eventually, right? You can't just live in a memory forever.
He says over time, the repetition reveals its own limits. The return feels the same, but you've changed around it. What used to feel like relief starts to feel like confinement.
The room starts to feel smaller.
The gestures don't soothe you in the same way. You start to notice the stillness, the lack of movement.
But, and this is the part that really gets you, he points out that just knowing this doesn't necessarily stop us.
We keep doing it anyway, even when we know it's a trap.
We can. We can know it's insufficient and still return. We can keep stepping back into that room, even while, as he says, noticing it has no windows. That image, a room with no windows, it gives me chills. You're safe, but you can't see out. You can't see the sky.
Because you're not going anywhere. That's the function of the room. It's a suspension of time, a pause.
So does he give us a way out, an escape hatch? How do you break the windows?
And that's the thing. He doesn't offer a 5-step plan. He's a philosopher, not a life coach.
Right.
He just says the return continues as long as the pull toward familiarity is stronger than the discomfort of its limits.
So it's just an equation. We stay until the pain of staying is finally greater than the fear of leaving.
Essentially. The self just lives in that calculation. The encounter becomes both refuge and reminder. It's a temporary home that also quietly reminds you of the difference between feeling at home and actually being held.
Between feeling at home and being held, that just wraps it all up, doesn't it? You can feel at home in a memory.
But a memory can't hold you. It can't support the person you're becoming, only the person you were.
It's so heavy, but it's also weirdly validating.
Yeah.
I think people feel so much guilt for sliding back into old patterns, like they're failing at moving on. But Malha frames it as this incredibly natural response to the exhaustion of just being a person.
It is natural. It's a rest stop from the hard work of becoming. Sometimes you need to rest in who you used to be. The only danger is when you mistake the rest stop for the destination.
It's okay to visit the room, just don't sign a lease.
Precisely. The whole experience lives in that tension.
This has been such a deep dive into something I feel like we just don't have the words for most of the time. The allure of the return, the safety of the known, and that gentle melancholy of a love that just circles back.
It really makes you ask yourself, is this actually nourishing me, or is it just relief?
And as we sign off, I want to leave everyone with a final thought, pulling from that exact tension. We all have these familiar rooms, these people or dynamics that feel like stepping into a warm, pre-made shape. It's easy, it's comforting.
But the question is, at what point does the comfort of the known become a confinement that stops you from becoming who you need to be?
If the room has no windows, how will you ever see what's coming next?
It's a question worth asking.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.